I promise you we'll be finished. We'll be finished by 10:30. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another one of our CE Sharpen the Saw series. Today we're talking about division updates and 3 different stipulation cases that were in the recent newsletter. We've omitted the names of these individuals, but their actual disciplinary sanctions by the division. So we thought we'd debate those, and I'm joined today by our very own and newly added in counsel for Berkshire Hathaway, Mark O'Brien. So say hi, Mark.
Hello.
Glad to have Mark, and not only for this CE class, but as part of our leadership team. What a great asset he is for all of us. Also, we got our managers here today. So Kevin, Cameron, let's see, let's get Kevin unmuted, Joe, and any of our managers. I think Mike Fondario's on. We can unmute Nick too. And let's see, I'm not sure if any other managers are on, but if they are, let's get them unmuted so they can participate in this as well. Anyway, thanks you guys for taking the time to be a part of this class. This is certainly kind of a review of a lot of things, but let's grab our handout immediately and go through this. I am going to jump to screen share, and we are, whoops, sorry. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's start off with these. Okay, is that better? Okay. Just a reminder, if you're looking at this, you can go up to your view options and have that fit in your screen if it's not centered for you. So I always have to remind myself of that when I'm watching some of the slides on sales meetings. So, okay, first of all, look, I'm just going to fly through these announcements, all of these up until the graph. I'm just going to, we're going to spend not a lot of time on that, guys. It's just kind of an update on what's been happening here from the state of Utah. First of all, as you can imagine with COVID, the fingerprinting was suspended through the end of October. So we're going to have to keep our eye on that. That could be turned on pretty quickly. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Hey, Will?
Yes.
I think that might have already been turned on. One of our agents in St. George just got suspended by the Division of Real Estate a couple of days ago because she didn't have her fingerprints done, and she just signed on with us in the summer, and she's literally suspended.
That may have been a break in the. Thanks for bringing that up, Kev. That may have been a break in because pre-COVID, there were some times when they needed to get those fingerprints. But I just copied this, guys, right out of the website or the newsletter. So it's suspended through the end of October. Of course, we just started, November when this class is hitting. And so we're have to pay close attention. I've heard no new news about the fingerprinting for renewals. So
yeah, she got suspended yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll follow up on that on sales meeting then. Let me see if I can dig into that, and unless anybody else has got any answers to that. So new licensees were given time frames. Yes, Don, also one of my fellow instructors at the IDW. That's weird. How'd I just get lines on my? That's weird. Let's clear that. Huh. Sorry, I did not draw that on there. That was weird. Yeah, new licensees were given time frames to get their fingerprinting done. So here's a couple other things that are coming up down the pike. There is going to be a new FHA addendum. It was submitted on September 13th. The commission's voted to approve that. Attorney General, we're waiting for approval from Attorney General. As soon as we get that, we'll circulate that out. Let's go down to the virtual live. We're kind of a product of all of this now. The division made some pivots back in March to allow for CE to continue virtually, called virtual live classes, which is what we're doing today on this class. And now they're going to make that an official rule and amend the administrative rule to mirror what we're able to do here, which is to have 100 participants get CE through a Zoom platform. Okay. And I'll remind everybody, please, if you need credit, let's go ahead and have you do two things for us. We already have your licensing information. So we'll go ahead and pull your license. So all you've got to do is come over to the chat and write credit. I'll use that as the role. And then Angie is taking screenshots and she will verify that you stay on. The division would prefer that your video is on, by the way. I'm saying preferred right now. It's not a rule, but they sure wrestled with that. And I think the spirit of the rule here is that try not to multitask too much, okay, to where you become distracted and we can't, really get the content. Okay. All right. That's my take on the new format. There's some things that about escrow accounts and trust accounts that are being amended. The name here is escrow account or trust account. That's fine. You're going to see in a minute that they've had some pretty deep penalties for brokers who had some problems with the trust account. So as they dug into that, I think that's why this amendment is happening here. The mandatory class, guys, I put down in your handout, when should we hold the next mandatory class? I believe that the last time we had the mandatory class, and Kev, remind me, but I've got down October 2019. We
held it downstairs. It was right. It was when it was new. Right. So yeah, it was a year ago.
So I guess, all right. Well, I know we've only got a snapshot of about 90 of us, but I'm curious, would you let me know? It looks like Dawn is teaching, one of our own Berkshire Hathaway instructors is teaching a mandatory class at the board. Would you guys like me to teach? Who needs it? I guess what I'm trying to say. Are you renewing your license and you've already done, if you haven't used the mandatory class for your renewal, you'll need it again. How many of you feel like you need mandatory class? Could you let me know that? So let's just type, like Linda, put mandatory, so I can, when I go back through and look at it, put mandatory class, and then we'll take a snapshot in sales meeting also. Hey, Courtney, are you on? You're on, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Courtney, do you want to see, just thinking out here quickly on my feet here, let's do a poll in sales meeting and let's figure out how many of our agents need a mandatory class. I mean, if we've got, 50 or more, we'll go ahead and have it. Okay. Diane, thanks you guys. I'll go back through the chats and count these up. So appreciate you putting that in the chat there. Okay. Let's move on there. I would just highlight this 4-year time limit. This is, and Mark, feel free to weigh in here, but I think we had some discrepancies on, I think it was 3 years, and then there was 1 year for the division to bring a complaint against an agent. And I think they're now just like shoring that up, that it's a 4-year time frame from the violation. Anything to add to that, Mark?
No, I think that's what they were trying to do, is just make it uniform across the board. These are obviously actions that are required of agents, or brokers, whether they be reporting or affirmative duties like in 401A or prohibited conduct. Once the division becomes aware of it, aware of the violation, they have 4 years kind of across the board. A little bit more standard, and so you don't have to go flipping through if you're concerned about a violation.
Yeah. Okay. You think there's any of our agents on this call that are going, whew, it's been 4 years. I'm in the clear. Okay. Confessions are held later, if you want to, but not during this. So no, I think that was just the division often is coming up against some of these ambiguities. So they're just fixing that. So, okay. This one here, I think there's a backstory to this, guys, on this 401C. The division and the commission combined are concerned about the lack of supervision from some brokerage models. Certainly at Brookshire, we take it extremely seriously about our, our involvement in the transactions, our oversight. Our staff is extremely I guess, intimately aware of our transactions. And there's so much access to brokers at any time. But I think what the state's trying to do here is to help, lift all boats in the industry and have some more emphasis on the supervising of agents. So we're hoping that that does bring up the entire industry. And I think that there's a backstory to that. You can kind of read between the lines and pick out, hey, this can be a problem. I know a lot of you have been frustrated with some of the level of understanding of a co-agent and then the help from the broker or lack thereof. So we'll hope that that makes some difference on that front. Any comments or from the panel per se on this? No?
No.
Okay. All right. Then we get this unclaimed funds within 3 years. So look, can you see a pattern here? We've got escrow account, we've got supervision, and then we've got this submit the trust funds. And the reason for that, if you flip ahead, I'll come back to this graph in a second. But if you flip ahead, you're going to see that we've got some problems with the state. Well, I don't know if I put that one in here, did I? Maybe it was in my notes. I didn't put it in. I wrote it down. You know what? Here, let me just tell you guys. It's back up in here. There were, how many of you read the newsletter? I'm curious. Do you read the newsletter when it comes out? Most of you? I mean, I love it. It's great reading. Mark and I, yep, we read it. James Patterson novel, Division newsletter. So, yeah, how many of you read it? Great. So, there were 3 cases where there were hundreds of thousands of dollars that were, in one case, that were stolen from an employee out of the trust account, $300,000 stolen out of the trust account. I think the employee was ultimately, there were civil, not just civil penalties against this, like a lawsuit, but there was also criminal offenses brought to this employee. So boy, what a rocky road that individual is going to have. But over the course of years, they were siphoning out monies. And what the problem was, the lack of supervision over staff that was handling this. And the broker said, well, I had no idea. Well, the broker ends up in the division newsletter being fined for this. So, I mean, not talk about a, double penalty here. Not only did he have to deal with someone who was stealing funds, but he was also penalized from the divisions to oversee this. Here at Berkshire Hathaway, guys, we've got great, redundancy and separation of jobs and oversight and third-party audits of our trust account and all of our financing for that matter. And it's really well run. The oversight's really good. So if that would be the case in all brokerages, of course, the industry would be a lot better off. Because a trust account is a very sensitive account, as we know. It holds a lot of money, and it's not ours. It's not ours until it's used, and it's just like the word says. We are holding it in a trust situation where we're trusted for our honesty and protection of those funds. So I just thought that was interesting. How many of you saw those? I'm just curious. Let me look at all of you. How many of you saw those fines from the division, from the brokers? Did you notice that? You did? Yeah, Kevin did. I'm looking at hands through. Okay. Yeah, so kind of scary to think, but yeah, thanks for the chat updates too. Okay. All right, let's go to the graph. I just thought this is kind of interesting on what the growth is. By the way, what I've been told from the schools is that there's 300 people taking the test every month. Okay, that's 3,600 a year. But look at the count from January. Total licensees 16,000, has only gained about 700. So what do you think's going on there? What's happening to all these new agents that come into the business? What do you think's happening? Any thoughts on that? Go ahead and type them in. I mean, Don, I know you probably have some thoughts on that too. every year, guys, the Division of Real Estate holds an instructor workshop, and those who have instructor licenses will attend this. And so we go. Don was with me there, and we attended this by Zoom. So yeah, I mean, Don says it's not as easy as it looks. We have a huge dropout rate. You guys are right, Tara. You know, there's yeah, I mean, it's been, yeah, Brian, a lot of come in and get out pretty quickly. Jeff, finding out it's actually work. Yes. It's not easy money, Jill, you're right. They need income immediately. I think Julie's right there. How long can a new agent go without making any money and paying fees to be in the business? The reality is, we all know this if you've been in it a while. This business is challenging. It's very complex. It's not as easy as you think. And for those who are new in our company, you know, we got to be disciplined about sharpening our saws and knowing our stuff, but also being disciplined in how we go about prospecting and working our business. And when those efforts, I think those two endeavors combined, we do pretty well. Anyway, I thought that was just kind of an interesting graph. We're really not growing that many agents as good as the market is. You know, it's up, say, 750, but that's not very much compared to how many are going through school.
Hey, Will, do you have I know that's statewide, but do you have the Salt Lake board? Is it up?
I don't. Does anybody know to Kevin's question on Salt Lake board?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either.
Hey, Joe, unmute Kevin Larson too, if you can, if you haven't already. Agents don't renew after 2 years because they broker support. That's right, Kev. I don't know the boards, but if you guys do know before the call's up or do a little research, I'd love to. Oh, John Lucky, great. So we just added 200. Okay, so 200 for the year, John. Is that right? Salt Lake board. How about Park City board? Does anyone know? Or St. George? I noticed St. George is up, but there's 16. If I remember this correctly, in St. George, there's 1,600 agents licensed in Washington County. And by the way, right now, residential houses. Anyone want to take a guess how many residential houses are on the market in St. George or Washington County? It's only 600. There it is. Yeah, well, it's 600. There's only 600 properties. That's crazy, right? At all price points. So it's nuts. But yeah, clearly we're seeing a vacuum effect into the business, but that vacuum is, unless agents get serious about what they're doing, they're not going to stick. So
look at Kim's question. Cash Valley's up 500 agents with only 87 homes on the market.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay,
Wow.
That's Kim Phipps, you guys, up in Logan. Our manager's gonna be running our new office up there. Kim, edit your name so it says Kim Phipps. But yeah, that's crazy. 87 homes. So this is unprecedented times, as we've been saying. Okay, this is really the meat of the class here, guys. I wanted to talk about this so we understand how these things work. There's the cases, the enforcement. There's a lot of cases received from what I understand. Look at the numbers. Real estate complaints received. So, they're coming up a little bit here. August had 28. How many were closed, and then how many cases they currently are working on. And it's good to see that is dropping. But right now, our own Joy Nattel, Karen Duncan, who had spent time at Brookshire, our investigators there, and work with the division. And it's good to see the cases are dropping, but they're still dealing with 400 cases. And when you see these cases closed, they end up in the division newsletter as a disciplinary action. That's a stipulation. So
hey, we'll go back down. Look at that. Make this point though too. If you look at the number now, even though it says 475 as opposed to 520 in January, we've sold twice the real estate we had in January. So we're really down as far as problems.
Yeah, and these numbers are last year. So, but I mean, is life good because everyone's too busy, or are we going to see a ripple effect later? I don't know, but I think, to Kev's point so far, if we can keep this trend going, I think that's better for our industry. I mean, we all are kind of in this together, because the public, if the public review looks at listing their house with a realtor as a bad thing, then it affects all of us, and then our message needs to be, get serious about the professional that you hire and the firm in which you hire, because the experience of the agent is a huge factor in how well the transaction goes. So, Mike Funderi, what are percentage of complaints results in fines, disciplinary actions? They do throw out quite a bit. A lot of these are not, received, Mike, from what I've been told. I mean, they throw out a lot. And I'm going to talk about how we handle that in just a minute. So, and this was kind of really what we wanted to get the message across to everybody, Mark and I, and of course our managers as a unit here, on how do we keep ourselves out of legal trouble, and what happens if we ever sense or get a feel that we may get a problem from the division. So first of all, let's understand something about disciplinary actions you see in the division newsletter. The word stipulation means that the agent or broker has agreed to the action taken against them. So when you look at like definition of stipulation, it means they stipulate it. It means that they're saying, yes, I agree to it. So the evidence is strong enough to cause a settlement or a stipulation. Those words are kind of synonymous with each other. So they agreed to the settlement. So every one of those newsletter fines is something the agent agreed to, okay? Point number two is, remember that the cost to defend some of these can be much more than the fines levied. In some cases, they are extremely expensive to battle the division. Of course, the division is very practiced at going against agents who've committed some serious offenses, and they've got the resources in most cases to combat that. And then this point that most of the fines result in the lack or misunderstanding of fiduciary duties by agent. Let me turn just a minute. Mark, do you want to add to any of this, or what's your perspective on how the division, gets through these complaints and levies these fines against agents?
Yeah, it's interesting that they use the term stipulation. It's essentially, as you've described, an agreement or a consent to the facts and evidence as presented. So the agent or the broker will stipulate to the fine or the punishment that is levied. It's essentially the agent forcing, or the division forcing the agent to say, yes, the division is right, I was wrong. So I view it as a bit harsh when I see that word, but it is a, we don't even see that in various state bars. We don't see that. We just see that a fine was levied or action was taken. So it goes to the seriousness of the division in enforcing violations. That's kind of what sticks out to me. It's kind of an official, strong sounding resolution to an enforcement action. And yes, number two, the cost being more. There are law firms and attorneys that specialize in professional malpractice representation. It's not just doctors. It's other lawyers. It's real estate professionals, and that can be very, very costly if you have to engage an attorney on that basis. Because, like Will said, the division is prepared to pursue an enforcement action. You individually may or may not be. And if you have to go out and get help to defend yourself, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have seen a few cases. I think I shared one with you where the offense happened outside of our brokerage, but we loved the agents so much and thought they were kind of caught in a peculiar situation. So, we wanted to help defend them, even though it didn't happen under our watch. And the amounts of dollars spent to defend were enormous, you guys. North of, I believe, minimum 10,000, but I was hearing it may have gotten over 20,000 to defend. So it can get very, very serious. So there's something else too. Mental reminder here, guys. If there's more to it than just the fine amount. Those the wording that's used is also a negotiated term, I guess you could say, in the stipulation or settlement. So the way that it's worded, the agent also agreed to. So, keep that in mind when you're reading those. The evidence is so strong, the agent basically just has to agree and say, yep, I did this. So we're gonna dive into these cases. I want to leave us enough time to do so. We're right on time though. We're about halfway through, and I think we're right on it. Now this section on how to handle potential legal issues. Watch this. Now, and this is going to scare all the managers and Mark and I, but just will you do me a favor? Have you ever in your real estate career been worried about a lawsuit? I just said worried. You've ever been worried? Go ahead and vote on your, raise a hand or give me a thumbs up. You've ever been worried or concerned that you may have had a legal issue or you could be sued as an agent in any sort of a way? And you guys take a look at this. Take a look at how prevalent it is. It's kind of the nature of our business. You deal with enough people, it's not always tied to the ethics or the standards of the agent. Sometimes it just has to do with the way real estate transactions are. Mark, are you seeing this?
Yes, there's lots of yeses, and frankly, that's good that agents are aware of it. I'm aware of it as an attorney. I've been practicing over 20 years, and it's always been a concern of mine. And it's not necessarily a violation or any sort of ethical or other infraction on my part. It's the nature of the complexity of what we do and what you do in your day-to-day life, and we're always at risk for complaints. So it's good to keep your guard up and know what your duties and responsibilities are. So
now we get to talk about how in the world can we get ahead of this. And let's go. So if you ever have a sense that someone's pretty upset and things are going sideways in a transaction, involve your manager right away. Craig Lelis had a kind of a little funny spin on this. You've heard the term lawyer up, and he says, we need to tell our agents to broker up. And I like that. I think that, there's a lot of collaborative intelligence around our group, guys, and we can protect you and navigate you through the complexities of these transactions. So let's broker up. Anytime you start to feel like something's a little sideways, it's good to kind of bounce those things off the management. And then if it needs to be escalated, then the manager will know when to do that. And it may rise to Mark and I, or it may even go, it may just need to stay right with the manager, and everyone's got it and we're good, and frankly, a lot of it does happen at that level, and it happens well at that level. So, we want to make sure we should never, ever, ever at Berkshire Hathaway be surprised by some complaint at the division. We should know way ahead of that something might be lurking, because we can cut this off at the pass. We often can come up with ways to work through these things. So, Mark, do you want to take number 2? I thought what you said about this was really good. This compile the file. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I'll just comment on 1 as well. We thought it was important enough to put something in the policies and procedures manual along those lines as well. Early intervention, as we call it, getting the problem or potential problem to your manager is really key to being able to manage that situation. And you'd be surprised, the managers are incredibly capable at handling very complex matters, but you'd be surprised at how much the managers collaborate and get together and figure out the best responses. And sometimes they'll call me, and that's great. So there's a process in place to help you, but early intervention is really key. On compile the file, that really is, if there is a potential claim, enforcement action, violation, complaint, the first thing we're going to ask, your manager is going to ask you to do is I'll need to see your file. And that includes everything from the transaction documents you would print out from .loop to your text messages, your emails, any notes you have, your recollection, kind of a timeline of how this transaction progressed, which you can either keep as you go or create in writing after the fact. But we'll want to see as much documentation as possible, because you will be able to provide us a lot of facts, but a lot of the facts are going to be written down, and that's will be our starting point. So keeping good notes and keeping a good transaction file is paramount to the work that you do.
You know what? It reminds me of the scout thing. You know, when you're lost, you know, what do? You stop and you figure out where you are. You know, you stop moving. You know, so instead of continuing on, you know, in some just because we're having dialogue and communications, if things get a little sideways, it's important to stop and see where we are. I mean, I think a lot of times we're being asked like things like who gets the earnest money if this thing fails? You know, where are we in the transaction? Did someone default? And if they did, is it clear that they did? Are they aware of it? Did they object to this? Is there something that we're not aware of? So we're trying to figure out where we are. And when we compile all of this together, we can do a better assessment as to where we are in the file or in the transaction. Okay, I think because we're talking about the division here, we take a twist in this how to handle potential legal issues. Legal issues are not always connected to the division. Matter of fact, most of them are not. I mean, we get, you know, clients and principals and transactions that have legal issues more often than anything with the division. I mean, coming back up to these, you know, look, there's not a lot of complaints that get filed here. So statistically speaking, we're probably dealing with something other than division. But if this ever happens to you, first of all, we've got to be responsive, and we've got to remember there is a statute for a 10-day response, but we don't just go contact the division without, you know, step number one. This should be a strategic effort. We should know where we are and how to respond to that. Specifically to the division, guys, there's a time frame where we can actually have a pretty open dialogue with them, and they'll share with us what they've discovered and where we are and what we have, and we can talk things out. They're trying to figure out if this complaint is legitimate or should it be dismissed. Remember, can we come back up and look? They're dismissing a lot of cases, right? So they don't always go with everything. Not everything they receive are they going to put effort behind. Okay, so we can have a strategy about defending our agents against the division. Generally speaking, Mark, do you want to weigh in? I mean, let's just say number 3 had nothing to do with the state. This just has to do with just, you know, principles that might be sideways. Do you want to talk about kind of, you know, what our roles are not when we have principles that are against buyers and sellers that are not getting along, where we go and what we don't do, and, you know, what can we do when principles are at odds against each other?
Well, I think that's, you know, an opportunity to call in likely a manager and get some guidance as to how to proceed. And it'll depend on what types of things they're arguing about. If it's normal course, I mean, there's a lot of disagreement in the course of a transaction over you know, what should be fixed or things of that nature. So there's things that rise to the level of getting your manager involved if there's just a complete impasse and the agent on the other side isn't speaking with you. Obviously, agent communication is paramount. The buyer's agent and seller's agent have to be communicating, and when they have difficult principles and the communication kind of stops, it's got to go to the manager level, in my opinion.
Remember too, guys, we're not set up to be the legal advice for the principals in the transaction. So, you know, we're going to be protecting the brokerage and our agents, and so, you know, we're going to have to be careful sometimes about how we go there. Mark, and I don't know what's the answer when someone comes to us and says, "Well, do you have an attorney recommendation to represent a principal in it?" Is that something that we want to provide, or should we provide that? Should we like a list of attorneys that could help principals in transactions, or no?
I don't know that we, you know, as a common practice should be doing that. I think, you know, people are certainly capable, buyers and sellers, of going and getting their own counsel. The only time that I would see a possibility of doing is having someone that we typically get up, second home buyers here up in Park City that you know, don't know of any attorneys. But I think as a general practice, I don't think it's a good idea to recommend attorneys. If you look at our documents, they say, we're not providing legal advice, and arguably recommending an attorney goes to legal advice. It just opens you up to a claim that, you recommended someone to a friend who was going to make sure your transaction was completed.
Got it.
And I frankly, I've been in that situation with agents before, where I was recommended to a buyer or a seller as a result of having a relationship with an agent. And, you have to make it very clear that you are representing that buyer or seller and not representing the agent or the brokerage. So I think it's a slippery slope to go down for us to be recommending attorneys.
Okay. Would it be any kind of protection if we recommended, say, multiple choices, or
Yes.
that's still just as dangerous?
That's where I was going next. Yes. If you're going to recommend, and I would recommend 3, 4, 5 on an equal basis.
Yeah. I get asked this a lot. Through the course of a year, I guess, it probably happens a dozen times during a year, but I don't know of anybody to recommend, and so, maybe we just, I think that's good advice, guys, is that we got to be careful about who we recommend on the legal side. Often I'm reminding our agents when we get into this is that, remember, the brokerage, although the public looks to us for some answers, I think they do come to us first and say, gosh, what should I do? We are their agent. We do represent them. So we are going to field these kinds of questions. We've got to remember that we're not set up. We're set up to market property and do the transaction and protect them legally as far as forms and processes go. But where the boundary is, we're not set up to help solve legal disputes between parties. That's not what our firm does. It's not what our brokerage does. So we just need to be able to explain that that's where, we have to hand the baton to someone else to represent them in that matter. Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's dive into one of these cases and see how you guys feel. I would like you to, raise your hand if you've got a comment on this, or maybe I could ask a few of you, some of my veteran agents who are on the call. I'm just sifting through the pages here. Maybe I'll ask you to participate here. Let's read the first one. So in a stipulation dated just recently, this is the last newsletter, Mr. Agent submitted an offer to purchase the property on behalf of the buyer. The offer was accepted, but the buyer later canceled the REVC when she determined that the property was not zoned as horse property. Mr. Buyer admitted that he had not executed a written agency with the buyer because she was a personal friend, and the sale failed. Mr. Agent's actions are a violation of administrative rule requiring written agency prior to representing a client. Mr. Agent agreed to pay a penalty of $1,000 and complete 3 hours of CE before renewing their license. Okay, well, first of all, why is this a violation? I know they stipulated it here, or saying it's a violation of administrative rule. Is this an obvious answer? Yeah, Rachel, it's an obvious answer. It's an obvious answer because it says it's got to be prior to. Do you think that there are agents who don't believe in subjecting their friends to this horrible document called the buyer-broker agreement? I'm being sarcastic. But do you think there's agents who believe that? Yes, nod, interaction. Are you guys there? Jeff, thank you. Nodding. Leslie, thanks. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I think there's some people who view that as being too restrictive. And if that's the case, I feel bad for that agent for not understanding their own value. Maybe they don't have much, frankly. Maybe that's the problem. But if they don't know their own value, then how could they have any value in the document that is the instrument used to hire them, right? That's the document used to hire them. So let's talk about the next one. Is it too much to ask of buyers to sign these kinds of contracts? Do you think that asking a buyer to commit to the agent in exchange for the agent's efforts to find and locate property is too much to ask? Okay, so I want to talk about, all right, let's ask it a little differently. Thanks for the participation. Keep it coming, you guys. Keep it coming. how did this end up being a problem? Hey, Mark, read between the lines here. What do you think happened? I mean, they wrote an offer. They didn't buy it. It wasn't horse property. The thing failed. How did this become even a complaint to the division? Who do you think brought this complaint?
The buyer likely brought the complaint.
So the friend, the friend brought the complaint to the division. And you guys look at they're all going, I don't want to play real estate anymore. It's too dangerous. No, I think that's kind of funny. You know, it's like, even the division says, yep, it's a personal friend, right? Even the division, they're friends, but we got a complaint from your friend. And your friends, why are they mad, you think, Mark? Why is the friend upset about this, do you think?
Likely because the agent was the way that I read it is because the agent was asking for a commission based on the sale fail.
Interesting. You think the buyer was saying, hey, the agent wants to get paid for a transaction that didn't close?
I think so, yes.
Huh.
How do you read it?
Well, at first I thought it was funny that it's the personal friend, and I'm pretty sure the buyer is the one that complained. You know, was the agent that inept that they tied this buyer up to a property that didn't fit what the buyer wanted?
Could be.
And now the buyer's frustrated over the agent's inability to just show them property that they want. Look, they didn't buy it because it wasn't horse property. Well, why didn't the agent know that in the beginning? Right? Why did we waste our time? You know?
Yeah, I would argue that the buyer wasn't necessarily damaged.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, Rachel's kind of on the same thing here with us, Mark. I think the friend was not represented properly and wasn't given professional advice and professional knowledge. So they were frustrated. I mean, it may have been a friend, but they did a horrible job. And that kind of goes in line with why they didn't sign the buyer broker agreement, because, you know, they don't even know what the form is all about, right?
Right.
So let's talk about this one. And hey, will you use some adjectives to describe this? Everyone jump on the chat. Let me make sure we're a little over halfway. We're almost home run here. So let's make this one a required interaction. Matter of fact, my monitors, will you help me monitor this? Answer this question. How does the buyer benefit from agreeing to the terms of the buyer agency agreement? Go ahead and type in, why is it a good thing for our buyers? You know, to Kristen's point there in the chat, Kristen senses that maybe there was lost earnest money, Mark.
Well, yeah, it doesn't say it was successfully canceled, Repsy.
Yeah, it canceled after deadlines.
Right. It sounds like there was also quite a bit of miscommunication between the agent and the buyer as well as to what sort of property she was looking for.
Yeah. Okay, keep those coming, guys. Appreciate your interaction. It helps us to argue that everybody was participating in case we ever get asked about it. So I do appreciate that. There's a lot of benefits to the buyer broker agreement. I think in some ways, even if we had to charge our own commission to the buyer, we should be confident enough that what we charge and what we deliver and that value exchange is in favor of the buyer. We do not want these people going about real estate transactions without you, without us behind them. As we know, that's very dangerous. And I mentioned this the other day in coaching. You know what the problem is that every once in a while, someone does it. All right. It's like the 1 out of 1,000 and someone does it. And then they go, see, you don't really need the agent and all those things. But the vast majority of the statistics are not in favor of that. Most of the time, this is extremely frustrating for both parties. This thing doesn't even happen or close. And then the liability is off the charts and the damages are crazy. And it's a huge frustration, and it's a bad experience. So there should be we've talked a lot about this in other classes. So you could refer to other classes about how to do our buyer presentations and where's our value deliver, how do we deliver value to a buyer in that that buyer consultation meeting, we're calling it, right? And that's in another class. Okay, thanks for the, yes.
I know you're headed in this direction, but
Yeah.
the answer to me here largely lies in 401A1, the fiduciary duties. That's what you're going to get out of the agent, Mr. Buyer, Miss Buyer. Once we sign this buyer broker agreement, I'm subject to a whole host of duties to you that I'm going to be acting in your best interests at all time. I'm subject to confidentiality, loyalty, a lot of things we'll get into here in a minute, but I wanted to link the BBA to that directly.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's liberating for me. I love what we do. I love our industry. I love the fact that we represent the client. We don't represent, say the employer per se. Like so many people who work for someone represent the company. Sometimes the company's objective are different than the person who's the consumer. But we should celebrate the fact that we are all about what's best for the client. And we're bound to those duties. I think it's a liberating position to be in. Okay, we've got 2 more to go in about 10 minutes. So let's go through the next one. So in this particular case, this was a broker who, again, agreed to the discipline, and this one was $2,500. He listed some properties that he had advertised as ready to be built. The advertisement was placed, but the local municipality had a building moratorium on the 9 lots. And then the lots were also advertised as owner agent. Although the broker was a co-owner of a home builder, he was not the owner of the lots itself. I'm kind of paraphrasing this. The broker admitted that his actions were a violation of the rule, number 1, that the principal broker exercised supervision over licensees. So we'll read between the lines here, this discipline came to the broker, but he probably tried to place blame on somebody he hired. Number 2, the licensee refrained from making false or misleading representations. And number 3, a licensee making reasonable efforts of the accuracy of the content in marketing of the property. So there's the fine. I wonder how long and how many hours he had to debate this with the division and what his true costs were. But I'll bet you it was pretty good because of the complexity of this, because we've got another party in here and what they did and all the time against this broker. So here's our questions. Can local municipalities sometimes alter the ability for sales to happen or as originally planned? What do you think? Yep, it happens. So what happens when, thanks for the comments, guys. Yeah, when that happens, that changed, this ready to be built statement. Okay. So what should have been done in this situation? What should, hindsight, I know is perfect here, but what should the broker have done when the municipality put a moratorium on building? What should have been done? Change the marketing. Pretty easy. Mike, thank you. Kim, thank you. Change the marketing. Okay, let's go a little more complicated here. Why would a broker want to put owner agent on the sign? Why did the broker see that as an advantage? Anybody? Isn't that interesting in this case that somehow the broker thought if I put owner agent, even though he did not own the lots, what do you think he was trying to do here? So John is saying, try to double-side it. Well, it's more liability. That's right, Mike. Puffing, it's an exaggeration, I don't know. Maybe he thought that it would put him in a better negotiating position. Yeah, see, Rachel, you and I, we think it's great minds, Rach, great minds. But yeah, maybe he thought he could have a better, negotiation directly with the owner. So I just think that one's kind of strange that, he was overstating something and it wasn't true. He was not the owner of those 9 lots. Okay, we're on the home stretch. Let's do the last one here. All right, this is a sales agent in stipulation order admitted that they failed to disclose that the buyer had failed to provide additional earnest money prior to due diligence deadline. Mr. Agent had failed to execute a written agency agreement with the buyer prior to signing the Rep C. These actions are in violation. In this case, $2,000 fine. Okay, first one. Let's see how smart our group is. When is the additional earnest money due? When is the additional earnest money due? So this agent is fined because it didn't happen and he failed to disclose. So when is it?
Per contract. I like that.
Yeah. They're smart. They're smart, Mark. They know how to answer.
I expected to hear Repsies flipping.
Exactly. So what is it?
It's the later of two things.
That's right. Rach, you got the idea? It could be due diligence, but it didn't actually have to be, but it's the later of what? You've got it right there, Mark. You want to read it?
It's the later of, I don't have it in front of me, either the due diligence deadline or the financing appraisal deadline.
So it's after all of the conditions have been removed, that earnest money is due. Okay, next question. Is notification only required sorry, let me rephrase this. Is the notification only required if earnest money is not deposited on time? I mean, do we need to be saying, hey, we got it, I just want you to know we got it? Or do we only need to say when we didn't get it? What do you think? Always notify we received the money? I mean, across the board, I think we all would like that, right? If you're the listing agent, don't you want to notice it says, yes, I got the additional earnest money today? I'm looking at your, yes, I agree. But that's a common problem, I think, with this additional earnest money is we're not doing a very good job there.
Hey, Will, usually if there's an additional earnest money due in the Rep C,
Yeah,
it's never collected. Everybody forgets about it. We see that so often. If that's in play, we see that so often. It's crazy.
you know, Kev, that's why we picked this stipulation. So what happened when the agent failed to disclose that the additional earnest money wasn't received? Well, he got tangled up with the division because a complaint was filed and a civil penalty of $2,000. And who knows what he had to pay to defend himself in that particular stipulation. So this is a big warning to everybody. When it comes to earnest money, deposits and deadlines, contractual deadlines, we've got to be extremely serious about it. We have to document when we receive it. We have to know when those deadlines are. We got to get out ahead of it, educate our clients well on it.
Bottom line is stay away from extra earnest money. Then you won't have the problem to remember. Because I'll be honest with you, and I don't know, the last 8 or 9 of those that we've seen, and that's over a period of a year or two, nobody collected that money. And we're sitting here at closing trying to figure out where the money is. It's just, everybody forgets. So why even do it? Why even do it? I don't think it improves your offer, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, in commercial real estate, I've seen this a lot. In residential real estate, I'm not sure why we threw that in the Rep C. I've never agreed with it, but it's there. And it gets used and it gets abused. That's the bottom line.
Well, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, I think the instance where I've seen it most often is when there is an extended settlement deadline. It doesn't make the initial offer any stronger. It just gives the seller a little bit more security. Have you seen it in that instance or others where there's a good reason for it?
We did have a case up in Park City, actually, where the earnest money was substantial. I want to say it was $500,000, but it was the seller was requesting additional earnest money because the buyer was asking for the property to be held off the market for 90 days after this period. And it was kind of a function of negotiating how long the seller could stay there also. So it's not just about when we're closing. The seller wanted to stay, but the earnest money need to be non-refundable. You know what, like everything in our business, there's not one thing that's always the answer. So additional earnest money is not always the answer. If you want to ask yourself if an offer with additional earnest money is stronger and makes a compelling case to the buyer, ask our listing agents to put their hats on and consider that. Can I put a twist on this too, though, Kev? Look at Jeff Topham's comment. Well, it's very hard to speed up closing with additional earnest money because the check has to clear. So if
exactly,
checks, yeah, that can cause a problem.
And if it's a check, we have the right to hold that for 10 days. The banks do too. So you got to be careful of that timing.
Yep. So we
Hey, look at Nancy Ernie's comment. You need to answer that, Will. It's
yeah.
bad.
Okay. What does earnest money cover? Does Mark represent?
No, she's talking about E&O insurance, Will.
Look at Nancy Ernie's comment. It's about Mark and
Oh, okay. Mark, let's address this
question.
one. Yeah, great. It's a good question. E&O does cover. Well, Mark, you answer this one. Here's the question: what does E&O cover? Does Mark represent Berkshire Hathaway Home Services agents or just the brokerage?
I represent only the brokerage. I do not represent the agents. If there is an E&O claim, we have and it rises to the level of the E&O carrier wanting coverage, wanting an attorney to be involved. We have a list of attorneys that we have proposed to them in connection with the renewal of our E&O coverage. And they will choose from that list, but I will not represent, and I do not represent, can't represent individual agents.
Yeah, I mean, it's really rare that our agents are out on a limb without us, but most of the time we're, connected together in these transactions. And so,
yeah, there are many instances where in representing the company, the agents will, in essence, be third-party beneficiaries to what we are doing on behalf of the company, but there is not a direct representation by me of any agents.
Yeah, we really couldn't do that. If you really think about that, if you think that through, I mean, we couldn't have, it'd be a conflict in some cases where attorney representing agent is also attorney representing brokerage. So,
right.
Okay, good question, you guys. Look, we've only got a few more minutes. I know there's probably a little bit more to do here. I will like to highlight Courtney's comment about the additional earnest money. Make sure that the office has 10 days or wire it. So it's better to wire that money if you have a closing that's coming up pretty soon after additional earnest money. So really good comments there, guys. I appreciate that.
Will, and I know you're trying to wrap up here, but we do have quite a few attendees that are simply a phone number or just a first name. We need people to hit the participants list and go in and see how you are showing up. And if worst case scenario, please just type in the chat. Like if you're just a phone number, or if you're just a first name, please make sure you put your full name in there because the chat is being recorded. We want to get you credit. We don't. It's hard to give John credit when it's just a John. We've got several Johns.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. Okay. And I do see that our participant number did hit as much as 105. That does include me and a few others that don't need CE. So we'll go back through this list, but we may have hit our 100 max mark on CE. That's really great.
That's great.
There, as kind of just a wrap up to all of this, here's the acronym for our fiduciary duties. Let's see how well you do it. This will be our final exercise, everybody. What does the O stand for? The L, the D? Do you guys want to fill that in? Don, you're fast. Let's see. Is she right? Maybe you guys had that done before I got here. While we were chatting, you had that all done. But those are the answers. Let's just confirm that. Okay, so the O is obedience to lawful instructions. So that's would go underneath there. The L is loyalty. So that means that the client's priorities are above the agent's. Disclosure, and that's full disclosure. That means if we have interest in property or we have a principal in a transaction, that we properly disclose that. Remember, we can't represent someone if we have interest in a property. Confidentiality is the next one. That means keeping negotiations points confidential. We account for all monies. That's the trust account issues that we sometimes see. And then reasonable care is the last one. And that's basically that's our professional duties that we would be required to have. Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me in this CE class. I thought it was very, very helpful. I'll tell you what, we've got another good one coming up. It's going to be like a bowl game, football bowl game type of atmosphere where we debate whether or not we should march shall or may in the REPC. And that will be coming up as our next class. But thanks for joining me, everyone. I do appreciate you. I love working with all of you. If you need anything, please call me anytime, and I'm happy to help you. So let's go about our day. Thanks. That ends the class. We'll stay
Hey,
around and
Will,
chat if you want, but you're
Will,
good to go.
do we get an hour and 2 minutes credit because you went over?